Good evening, guys. I hope you've had an amazing start of the month. Yani, it's December. We are happy to have you.
Yes.
And here we are, hopefully looking forward to wrap up our installments on Nehemiah.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely joined by Pastor Madenge right here. And it's been an honor and a joy to serve you in this way. And our
Yes.
prayer is that these installments have caused you to know the Lord more, and that the book of Nehemiah has come alive in your life, and that you'll also be able to apply this teachings and these insights also as you plan about the next year, 2021. But before we get ahead of ourselves, I want to throw Mr. Madenge here under the bus and just ask him, what is your greatest lesson for 2020? Now that, Christmas is here and you're looking at the 2021 is right here.
Oh my
It's
goodness.
two press-ups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever had another year where the year just comes to an end and I don't know how we got here. So I feel like this year has just flown by.
Yeah.
And I am here wondering that we are having jingle bells here and Christmas, and I cannot tell how we got here. But one of the things I think that has been distinct about this year is that I and my family have been able to see God as a faithful God. I think if there is one thing I'm assured of, is that the God who has taken us through 2020 will carry us through all our lives.
Yeah.
As in, we have seen so much of God taking care of us through this season. So I have great confidence in saying that the Lord takes care of his people because he has shown us such good care during this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. Again, I think the whole book of Nehemiah is also reminding us of the promises that God has kept.
Yes, for
And
sure.
when people choose to go back to him, just showing us
Yeah.
how God can honor his promises to his
Yeah.
people. Yeah, that's amazing. Last week we did
No, wait a
Nehemiah
minute.
chapter 3.
How about you? What are you have you no reflections about
I thought you
the
could let
past
that
year?
fly. 'Cause
No. You have to tell us.
All right,
What have
all
you
right.
learned
My,
this
my,
year?
my greatest lesson this year is all times are uncertain times.
Yeah,
We can't have certain times as long as we are on this side of
on
the
this side
world.
of the world.
But again, we can hold on to the greater eternal promise that we have a God
Yeah.
who has a certain and a fuller view of everything, and that he can be trusted. I'm reminded of Proverbs where he says that many are the plans of a man,
man's
but
heart
it's the Lord's will,
answers them,
the Lord's plan that prevails.
Yeah.
So ultimately, it's just a view of, even when I feel like if you bought a yearly planner for 2020, you just realize that Maze, plans are not in your hands. And even as you buy another year's planner for 2021 or diary, just remember that it is God who will honor the desires of your heart. Yeah.
Well, that's not very consoling in as much as it should be. That 2021 might also be unpredictable as 2020.
Not might be, it is unpredictable. But again, you can trust a God
Who has gone ahead of us.
who knows all things,
Yeah.
who has orchestrated all things from the foundations of the earth.
Yeah.
And we can look to him with confidence and trust him, even
Yeah.
as we cast our eyes in
Okay.
the next season that we will have.
I'll go and throw away that 2021 planner. I'll actually just say, the Lord.
That is the wrong application to my...
Alright, we'll talk about that some
Anyway,
other
but
time.
again, we've been doing the book of Nehemiah. We started in chapter 1, a subtle conversation leading to a definite action. And
Yep.
again, diving into chapter 3, seeing action, this action being executed. I mean,
Yep.
just seeing Nehemiah giving families responsibilities and saying that this house and this family and these sons should build this particular wall. And we see the work beginning. And here we are in chapter 4. And what we had seen in chapter 1, there's these two characters, actually 4 characters, the Tobiah, Sanballat, and
There's an Arab there.
Arab
Bishop.
there.
Yeah.
And we see them again coming
coming
to 4. I mean,
coming back in chapter
there are
4.
characters coming back in chapter 4, and that's what I want us just to dive into. And if you so, please just join us as we read this.
Yeah.
And Madenge will ably read it for us, as he loves to read it in a very passionate
I
way.
love reading the scriptures.
Yeah,
so let's just do it.
let's do it.
All right. Nehemiah chapter 4. Guys, turn with me there. And we'll read the whole of the 23 verses. When Sanballat heard that we were rebuilding the wall, he became angry and greatly incensed. He ridiculed the Jews, and in the presence of the associates of his associates and the army of Samaria, he said, What are those feeble Jews doing? Will they restore their wall? Will they offer sacrifices? Will they finish in a day? Can they bring the stones back to life from that heap of rubble, burnt as they are? Tobiah the Ammonite, who was by his side, said, what they are building, if even a fox climbed up upon it, he would break down their wall of stones. Hear us, O our God, for we are despised. Turn their insults back on their own heads. Give them over as plunder in the land of captivity. Do not cover up their guilt or blot out their sin from your sight, for they have thrown insults in the face of your builders. So we rebuilt the wall till all of it reached half its height. For the people worked with all their heart. But when Sanballat, Tobiah, the Arabs, the Ammonites, and the men of Ashdod heard that the repairs of Jerusalem's wall had gone ahead and that their gaps were being closed, they were very angry. They all plotted together to come and fight against Jerusalem and stir up trouble against it. But we prayed to our God and posted a guard day and night to meet this threat. Verse 10. Meanwhile, the people of Judah said, the strength of the laborers is giving out, and there is so much trouble that we cannot rebuild the wall. Also, our enemies said, before they know it or see us, we will be right there among them, and we will kill them and put an end to the work. Then the Jews who lived near them came and told us, 10 times over, whenever you turn, they will attack us. Therefore, I stationed some of the people behind the lowest points of the wall at the exposed places, posting them by families with their swords, spears, and bows. After I looked things over, I stood up and said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people, don't be afraid of them. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome, and fight for your brothers, your sons, and your daughters, your wives, and your homes. When the enemies heard that we were aware of their plot and that God had frustrated it, we all returned to the war, each to his own work. From that day on, half the men did the work, while half the men were equipped with spears, shields, bows, and armor. The officers posted themselves behind all the people of Judah who were rebuilding the wall. Those who carried materials did their work with one hand and held a weapon on the other. And each of the builders wore his sword by the side as he worked. But the man who sounded the trumpet stayed with me. Verse 19. Then I said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people, the work is extensive and spread out, and we are widely separated from each other along the wall. Whenever you hear the sound of the trumpet, join us there. Our God will fight for us. So we continued to work with half the men holding spears from the first light of dawn till the stars came out. At that time, I also said to the people, have every man and his helper stay inside Jerusalem at night, so that they can serve us as guards by night and workmen by day. Neither I nor my brothers, nor my men, nor the guards with me took off their clothes. Each had his weapon, even when he went for water. And that is God's word.
Praise be to God.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Praise be to God.
It's interesting to see how this opposition escalates.
Yes.
In chapter 1, when we read it, we were introduced to
Sanballat,
Nehemiah and him praying and all. But again, also we see these two guys showing up.
Chapter 2, that is.
Chapter 2,
Yeah.
we see them showing up in chapter 2.
Mm.
And again in chapter 4, this escalated opposition continues.
Yes.
And it's interesting to see the ridicule that they make. I mean, it's even funny, just reading what these guys
It's
were
humorous,
thinking.
man.
It's even humorous. What are those feeble Jews doing? Will they restore their wall? Will they offer sacrifices?
Yeah.
Will they finish in a day? Just those questions with the intent of
Yes.
mocking them and using mockery language
Yeah.
and just showing them that this work is not for you guys.
Yeah.
You guys are taking up a task that you are unable
To do.
to do. And probably just, we can just go ahead and look at the text
Yeah.
and just see the insights that are coming out of this,
Yeah.
and hopefully tying that to our current context,
Yeah.
and applying it to our lives and seeing what lessons can we learn in light of such kind
In light of this
heightened
opposition.
opposition. Also
Yeah.
observing Nehemiah's response
Yeah.
to this
To this kind of
um,
opposition.
Yeah.
I think one of the, I'll just start where you began, is the kind of opposition that we are seeing in this context here. These guys begin by ridiculing them.
Yeah.
But say, okay, sawa, you guys want to rebuild it.
Yeah.
That's just funny. How
Yeah.
can you even do that?
Yeah.
They call them, you are feeble Jews. Will you ever finish so that you offer
Yeah.
sacrifices? No, look at that rubble of stones burned by fire. Really, what are you going to use that? In fact, I
Yeah.
like what the Ammonite Tobiah says. You know, even if a fox, which is just a few pounds, a fox is like
Yeah.
a dog,
Yeah.
steps on top of that wall, it will crumble.
Yeah.
Imagine the amount of mockery that these guys are receiving.
Yeah.
Discouragement upon discouragement. They are calling them feeble. And then they don't just do that. Well, they are attacking them in the psychological, and they are making them feel weak and unable to do the task. They escalate the kind of involvement they want. Interesting, when the wall gets to half the size of the whole wall, that's that wall was about 12 meters high. So maybe they are at 6 meters of height. Hey, these guys realize, oh, you guys are actually going to do it.
Yeah. You're actually making it.
Yeah.
There's some glimpse of hope here.
They move now from just ridiculing them with the mouth,
Yeah.
and they actually want to take action to kill them. Listen to what they say.
Yeah.
But when Sanballat, Tobiah, and the Arabs and the Ammonites and the men of Ashdod heard that the repairs of Jerusalem wall had gone ahead and that the gaps were being closed, they were angry. They all plotted together to come and fight against Jerusalem and start trouble against it.
Yeah.
These guys are unrelenting. They want to oppose the work of God.
Yeah.
Nehemiah has been praying for them here, saying, oh, they want to oppose your work. But now they're actually going ahead to make threats against these guys,
Yeah.
against their lives.
Yeah.
In fact, they come with the Samaritan army. So the army from Samaria is surrounding Judah there. When they are making these threats,
Yeah.
they are actually with an army that
Yeah.
is ready to fight
Yeah.
these guys.
Yeah.
So you can imagine the kind of escalation that we are seeing here of great danger,
Yeah.
even against their own lives. And then finally, imagine it is not just a threat.
Yeah.
These guys were actually going to actualize it.
Yeah.
See what they do. Our enemies also said, this is verse 11,
Yeah. Before
they know it or see us, we will be right there among them, and we will kill them and put an end to their work. In fact, they say that the Jews who were living around them told them, whenever you turn, they
Yeah.
will attack us.
Yeah.
So that you know that this was not a joke, verse 15, when our enemies heard that we were aware of their plot and that God had frustrated it, we resumed our work. In fact, he's saying the enemies were actually
Yeah.
having a true and real
Yeah.
plot
This
that
threat
God
was real.
Imagine.
The imminent attack was, the imminent opposition was
real.
to happen.
Was real.
Yeah.
There is no joke about it. These
Yeah.
guys were about to come and attack Nehemiah and the Jews.
Yeah.
So there is great opposition we see here. And I think even when we come to our own lives, we undergo opposition a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's more psychological than even at the guys who are opposing you.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I read this verse, oh, pray for your enemies, you wonder, oh, do I have enemies?
Yeah.
Is there anyone who wants to kill me in this world? Maybe not.
Well, yeah.
But I think we can resonate with these guys at one point where a voice of discouragement, someone
Yeah.
who makes you doubt yourself, makes you
Yeah.
think that you cannot do it,
Yeah.
makes you even doubt the strength on the promise of God
Yeah.
over your life to bring you good success.
Yeah.
So I think we have guys like this who I don't know what you think about
Yeah.
that, but clearly the discouragement works. At some point, these guys, their strength is weak.
Yeah.
If we look at verse 10, maybe you
Yeah.
can help us go through that.
Yeah.
Says,
Yeah.
meanwhile, the people of Judah
Say
said,
the strength of the laborers is giving
Yeah.
out, and there is so much trouble that we cannot rebuild the wall.
Verse 11,
In verse 11 says, also our enemies said, before they know it or see us, we
Yeah.
will be right there among them, and we'll kill them and put an end to the work. And it's quite fascinating to see how this ridicule was very intentional.
Yeah.
They start by hitting at the very core of their identity,
Yeah.
calling them feeble Jews,
Yeah.
going to the task, who will actually be able to undergo this task of
Yeah.
restoring, just questioning the identity of the Jews, questioning the work that they are
Yeah.
giving themselves to, questioning even their act of worship. Will you even offer sacrifices? What will you do to do this? And then also questioning how long can it take? Are you guys willing to take all that long while to build this wall?
Yes.
Considering the task
Will it
ahead
take a day?
is huge. And again, will you bring these stones back to life? And
Imagine.
again, we also see in verses 11, verses 10 and 11, that this external imminent attack of ridicule and mockery and discouragement actually hit at the very, very core of these people.
Yeah.
That also they had an internal opposition that led them to even doubt themselves. They first made this claim that this work is a lot. I mean, the strength is giving out.
Yes. We are tired.
We are fatigued. We are not willing to undergo this
Yeah.
task. And also, later on, this is because, I mean, to what end should we be doing this? Again, the war is real. As historians
guys
have
want to
actually
kill us,
acknowledged.
man. Yeah.
Historians have actually acknowledged that the city of Jerusalem, where the walls were to be built, the Kinatobias, the Sanballats, the Ammonites, they had surrounded this city
from every side.
from every corner. So it was real that if an attack was to happen, it was a sure win.
Yeah.
But again, it's interesting to see the response that Nehemiah has once this ridicule is done. He goes ahead and prays, and he says, "Hear us, our God, for we are despised."
Yeah.
And I don't know whether that's how we respond to opposition. It's easy to always be defensive and say, "By the way, we can actually do this. We can manage to do this." But Nehemiah still holds on to the confidence that the person who is more than able to carry us through this task amidst the opposition is God.
Yeah.
And also, it's beautiful to acknowledge that even praise that God would cover their guilt and even blot out their sins.
Yeah. Will not cover their guilt.
Will not cover their guilt, yes.
Or
but
blot
again,
out their sin.
or blot out their sins from your sight, for they have thrown insults in the face of the builders. So he's just calling himself out and praying for these guys amidst the opposition.
I like the kind of response here we see between Nehemiah and the Jews here. That first, when you are ridiculed, as you said, before answering back, and you know, most of us, that is what we do. Once we face ridicule, the next thing is like, what do you mean? You want to defend yourself. Nehemiah does not even speak one word to these guys. But immediately he goes into prayer and commends them to God and says, God, you are the righteous judge. You alone are able to judge these guys. Judge them on our behalf. Quote unquote, that is exactly, hear us, our God, for we are despised. Turn their insults back. But the righteous judge, the judge of all the universe, is the one I will commend my God.
Administer justice.
Administer justice. Now, so that's the first one. And then, the second thing they do, they start threatening them.
Yes. Escalated again. It's from ridicule now, it's threats. We're going to kill you guys.
The first time, tumeomba, and then he says, verse 6, so we rebuilt the wall till all of it, it reached half its height.
For the
people worked with all their heart. So, wameomba. Wameambia God, you are the righteous judge, you alone can judge us. And I'm not saying that the next time you have enemies, start praying this kind of prayer to them. Prayer. You find some of those in the Psalms. But it is a commending of injustice to God and saying, God, you are the one, only one who we can find true justice from. Will you do justice? And I think that is a prayer that even us can make in our time of trouble. When someone is troubling you and someone actually is opposing the work, even the work of God, that you can pray to God and say, God, you are the judge of all things. Will you judge this situation? Will you judge this person on my behalf? So I like how they pray, and then they go back to work. With all their heart. In fact, the Bible says, they actually built and worked with all
Their
heart.
heart. Yeah.
Even in the midst of such discouragement.
Yeah.
What a lesson for us, especially.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then we
Yeah.
can look at the threats now.
And the threats again,
Yeah.
the threats were real. I mean, they were supposed to die.
Yeah.
And they were supposed to be killed. Sorry, but again, what we see is that we see Nehemiah stationing, acting. He
Yes.
prays and acts. We
Yes.
definitely see him doing all those balances.
Yes.
He's praying and
But
still
he's
acting,
acting.
and in a sense, putting himself in this space and knowing that I
Yeah.
know God is able to fight for us, and that God is great and awesome.
Yeah.
He's able to hold us through this
Yeah.
through this opposition, which is internal.
Mm.
Now that I mean, the guys in Judah felt like this is you're giving us so much
Yeah.
that we can bear, and yet the Sanballats and the Tobias, the Tobiah and the Ammonites are also launching their threats and escalating it. He still turns to God in prayer,
Yeah.
but again he still calls the nations to not the nations, calling the Jews to go ahead and give themselves to the task of building and fighting.
Yes.
But again, there's something else we see in verses 15
Yeah.
or 14, when he had thought about these things and looked over these things,
Yeah.
he stood up and made an interesting case, which again, I see it as a beautiful way of, amidst the opposition that you might
Yes.
experience, even as you give yourself to the task that God has given you, is to remember these two things. And Nehemiah reminds the Jews then and says, do not be afraid of them. That is their enemies. Remember the Lord, who is great and awesome.
Yeah.
And then he goes ahead to say, fight. For your families, your sons,
yeah.
your daughters,
your brothers,
your wives, and
yeah.
your homes. They're just showing us, do it for God. That's
it is God. Remember the Lord
your God. Remember
yeah.
Him who gave you this promise. The same God who took you to exile. The same God who
brought you
out of exile, and the same God who has availed the resources for you to start this work, and the same God who will sustain you through this work.
Yeah.
But again, he goes ahead and say, if it's not for anything else, do it for God, but also remember that you have families here.
Yeah.
Would you want to let your family, your homes, your people to live in disgrace on your watch?
Yeah.
Which I think is also a very amazing. It's an amazing way to look at things, especially when you give ourselves to tasks that are ahead of us.
Yeah.
I mean, in our country, corruption. It's a big thing. It's
Yeah.
a huge monster, and we can go back and argue with the Jews, the guys in Judah, and say,
this thing is too big.
This thing is too big.
We can never finish. Yeah?
You do not have. You don't even have any power above your, even in your village. You do not have any influence. But again, the greatest call here is the personal responsibility of doing it for God, who is great and awesome.
Yeah.
And again, also doing it with the next generation in mind.
Yeah.
With your family, with your wife, with your homes, and
it's
the
not
next
just
generation.
a selfish. You might be okay yourself, but do it for them.
Yeah.
Who can't have someone to do it for?
Yeah, and that gives us again an overview.
Yeah.
When we give ourselves to this huge, outrageous tasks that God will give us and callings that God will grant us, to look introspectively that this is unto God, but also to look at the influence that this will impact the nations for the glory of God.
Yes.
And I think it's a beautiful response that we see, that amidst the opposition, Nehemiah prays.
Yeah.
Again, he acts. And again, he encourages people, the Jews then, and the nobles and the officials, to remember these two things. To remember God, and also to look forward and to fight for their families. Yeah.
I like something there that Nehemiah is doing. Whilst he is encouraging guys to remember the Lord good and awesome.
Yeah.
He says, it is the Lord. As in, it's almost telling you, remember that God is on your side.
Yeah. Yeah.
Guys, the first thing that should give you great confidence in the rebuilding of this wall is against this opposing this threat.
It's God.
The Lord.
Yeah. The Lord is
with you. But then he says, pick up your spears and let us fight.
Yeah.
So you are like, and I think.
Are we fighting? Is God fighting? Is God and us fighting?
This is the intertwine between human responsibility, me and you, and what God has told us to do, and God's sovereignty. And sometimes we can get caught in one or the other, where you say, but God knows all things, and God is good, and God will do all things. So why do I have to do anything? Or on the other hand, you swing to the other extreme of,
It's up to me.
It's up to me.
Yeah.
God, it's true, I have prayed, but it is all me. Nehemiah sort of walks right in that middle path where he's saying, stand up,
Yeah.
fight for your
Yeah.
families, fight
Yeah.
for your homes.
Yeah.
But he's also saying, like verse 20, what verse 20 says, whenever you hear the trumpet sound, join us there. So
our
not
God's-
join us there walking.
Yeah.
Come with your spears and your
Ready to fight.
Then he says,
Our
our
God's-
God will fight for us. Imagine that he's saying, come ready to fight, come we are fighting, but also come knowing that God will fight for us.
Yeah.
So that those two things should never be looked at as if they are
Yeah.
separate.
Yeah.
It's one and the same. That I am working, I am putting in the effort. It's the same way that I think it's Paul who says that in Ephesians, I believe,
Yeah.
that it is God who worketh in us
Yeah.
to
To will and to
will
do.
and to act in
According-
accordance to his
Yeah.
will. So I like that real there. So my question would be,
Yeah.
seeing a man and a nation and a people who are both trusting God in prayer and ready to actually do what it takes, working with all their heart. That is what the first part tells us.
Yeah.
And then the second part tells us picking up their swords, ready to defend themselves,
Yeah.
posting guard, working with one hand on the spear
Yeah.
and
another
one hand on the
your,
brick.
On your brick and the shovel. then.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
what does God do with such a people? Maybe just to look at what is the result of a people who are working with all their heart,
Yeah.
but also trusting God fully for the work to be complete. And maybe the first one we can look at is verse 6.
Yeah. Yeah, God's victory.
Yeah.
that the work continued amidst the and
Imagine.
I mean the wall started from ground
Zero.
zero, from rubbles
Yes.
to half its height.
Imagine.
Yeah, not
It-
accelerated
It's
progress.
such, it's such a quick span of time that
Yeah.
Kinasan and Balat
Yeah.
are actually shocked.
Yeah,
When they learned, they were angry, they are confused. How did you guys get to that height?
Yeah.
And now they start planning to actually frustrate even the work farmer. Yeah. So I think that is one of the results of a work that God has blessed, that has been taken to God in prayer fully,
Yeah.
but also that these guys are not relenting. They are
Yeah.
working with all their strength. I think something else we can see, verse 15. These guys go to God and pray. And they are like, God, you have heard these guys
Yeah.
make justice. See what God does. Says, when our enemies
Yeah.
heard that we were aware of their plot. Number one, God makes the information leak
yeah,
from the
Yeah.
enemy's camp
to get it to them,
to this guy's camp.
and that frustrates
Yeah,
their plans,
and
and
that-
God frustrates their plans.
And then God frustrates their plans.
Yeah.
So the way they had planned, you will attack from the south or the
Yeah.
lowest part. Already there's an armed guard that has been posted there by
Yeah,
Nehemiah.
yeah.
Or already Nehemiah himself and the trumpet blower are actually that part of the wall. God actually comes and frustrates the plans of these guys so that he can give victory to Israel. It reminds me of the story of Elisha, where, is it Nehemiah, who was it? Who, these guys are making plans and then he tells him, you know, the plans you even make in your own bed. There's a guy who tells the king about it. This guy knows everything.
Yeah,
He,
yeah,
in fact, when they came to attack Elisha
Yeah.
so that they were blinded on their
yeah,
eyes,
yeah,
Elisha used to tell the king of
Yeah,
Israel
yeah.
everything that is happening in the enemy's camp.
Yeah.
And you would almost see a similarity here that God brings to bear the plans of the
Enemies.
enemy
Yeah.
on Israel, and then he frustrates
Yeah.
the plans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Then I don't know whether there's
Yeah.
something else that God did here
Yeah.
as we end the story.
I think what we see also is the greatest takeout for me is opposition is real.
Yeah.
It's real. The threats are real, and even for us as we give ourselves to different tasks.
Yeah.
And again, as we started from the place of acknowledging
Yeah.
that we will experience opposition. That God will give us great tasks.
Yeah.
He will cause us to get into deep dreams and visions
Yeah.
for our homes, for our families, for
Yeah.
our nation, and for our church, for His glory. But again, we will experience opposition. And what we can learn from Nehemiah and from the people of Israel is that amidst that season of opposition,
Yeah.
we can look to God, knowing that if truly, truly He's the one who called us to do it, we can hold on to the promise that he will see us through.
Yeah.
But again, also we can also look at it on the other way, that we can also be the ones who are opposing what God is doing. We can be the ones who are the sources
Yeah.
of discouragement. Those
Yeah.
guys are saying, okay, what are you up to? I think you are biting too much. I think you are overambitious.
The rubble
I think
is too much.
This is too much. I mean, how can you say that you can start a children's home and feed 1,000 children? I mean, where do you start from?
Yeah.
But again, ultimately, what we can look back and see is that we can choose to be supporters. We can choose to be faithful
Yeah.
stewards of those to us who God has called us to do different things,
Yeah.
and that we can support those visions. We can pray for them. We can go ahead and give of ourselves and of our resources towards the causes of advancing the goodness of God in our world today. And we can acknowledge that even when opposition comes, we can still pray to God about it. But even as we do that, we ought to continue praying and acting. For we know that this war and this opposition is not primarily against us. It's primarily against the work that God is doing. Because again, the issue wasn't Nehemiah. The issue was Jerusalem.
It's the city of God,
It's
and these are the
rebuilt.
people of God.
Yeah. So the sole reason why they fought this issue was because Jerusalem was restoring its glory, restoring its gracefulness, and walking away from the disgust and the disgrace that this city had experienced because of the ruins and the war that had broke out and led to that destruction. So for us, I think it's a learning curve for us to know that we need to give ourselves towards the causes of God and to trust in God's sovereignty as we do our human responsibility, not to slack. And also not to be discouraged when opposition hits so hard and we feel, I mean, is this even worth it? Why am I giving myself towards this? And to always look at, again, the person who has called you to do that job, who is God. And the second thing, looking at the impact that this will give to the next generation. You might not be able to see the fruits of this city. Again, we will see later on that it's because of Nehemiah's work that, again, now that we're in the Christmas season, as Reverend John had alluded to, we had a Bethlehem, and it's because of this rebuilding that ushered.
Christ himself had somewhere to come and stand in the temple and say,
yes.
Yeah.
And again, Nehemiah didn't live to see all that. But again, him fighting and those Israelites fighting for the causes and this great task of rebuilding the wall ushered in the Messiah.
That's amazing.
So I think it's a beautiful thing for us just to look at that.
I think I'm very encouraged to hear that when God's work begins, if God begins some work, there is no way it's going to stop. And God himself will make sure that work is complete. But we have to do our part. These guys gave it all with all their hearts. But also, on the other hand, God is actually sovereign over it all and giving them good success.
Amazing.
That is a great encouragement even during this season.
Thank you very much. We've come to the end of our episode, and we have some interesting news. We are taking a short break. Christmas is here, and we want to celebrate.
The boozes must be taken.
The boozes. They have to be taken. This guy is a master chef when it comes to that job. He has been preparing.
Yes, I'm hoping I can get a few invites from your houses.
But again, we look forward to coming back with continuing chapter 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, until we get to the end of this book. But again, for now, we wish you all the best. We pray that God will keep you, and that this Christmas season will remind you that He is a gift to us, a gift that brought salvation, that God entered history and defined our lives by giving us His Son, who saved us and redeemed us to Himself.
Amen.
And again, even as you look forward to the new year, we pray that God will lead you, that even as we talk about these things about God calling us towards serving Him in different ways, that you will be bold and courageous to trust Him along the way, and that He will be your guide and your shield and your fortress. Barakatele, Merry Christmas to you in advance.
Merry Christmas to you.
And a very Happy New Year in advance to you. Barakatele.
All right. See you guys. Thank you.